is some legislation you have other models to work off of. This is kind of one of a kind, so it's still very much a work in progress for the contractors out there that that want to provide input. We welcome it. But I'll go ahead and excuse me, bring Mr. Schulte and Mr. Swepson back over here to the podium so that we can answer any questions that any of you may have for any of us.
Senator, are you telling us that the Consumer Sales Practices Act right now does not cover this industry?
It does in certain circumstances. A bait and switch is a bait and switch, for example. Okay, we do have laws that would prohibit a bait and switch. But what we're doing is, since we're adding additional components, additional requirements, okay, the Consumer Sales Practices Act is still going to apply to the items that we have added to the code, like the registration requirements, the acts of misrepresentation. So what this is going to do is going to give us a better ability to enforce and to discourage the fraudulent operator. For the example, having the registration number right off the bat, you can identify them looking out the door. If they don't have a number, they're not registered. We can then find them in violation immediately, as opposed to trying to catch them in the act, which is much more difficult. Many of these people never know that the bait and switch occurred because to be able to check their vents and see if they're dirty, you have to cut a hole and put a scope, and many of them don't even know that it happened. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add to that.
I would add, yeah, one of the things we've seen, even here in Ohio, with one company in particular that was the focus of the Dateline NBC episode. As soon as they were exposed on Dateline NBC, they shut down their business. Chris Hansen knocked on their office door and they were gone already the next day. Shortly after that, we know this company is back in business, basically. And if you do a little digging, you can find that there's a pattern there. Some of these companies can be traced back to 3 or 4 companies that have bad records with the Better Business Bureau. So the registration is truly a critical aspect of this legislation.
Senator, I understand how registration is new.
Sure.
I get that part. But the other parts, if the Consumer Sales Practices Act already applies to this industry, as it does others, then lying to somebody about whether something's broken or dirty, bait and switch, aren't these things already against the law and can be prosecuted by the Attorney General?
Some of them, yes. But when we go further, the registration requirements are key. That's a key added component that we have to state affirmatively is covered by the Consumer Sales Practices Act, because that does not apply. The reason why that's important is we have to have the ability to be able to go after them for not registering, because we know the bad actors aren't going to register. So instead of waiting them to try to catch them in a bait and switch, which is very difficult, if not impossible, because that individual may never know to bring a private action, we can right away nail them on the registration violation. The registration for anyone operating appropriately shouldn't be that hard to comply with. So in situations like that, we have to affirmatively state that the Consumer Sales Practices Act applies, so that if they're in violation, if they don't have their number on the vehicle or whatever, we can immediately look into it.
Okay, so it's really the registration thing is the new thing that you're really going to be able to go after people on that you can't go after people on now. If you think they're doing bait and switch, you can't prove it or whatever. You're going to get them on the registry. You think you're going to get them on the registration?
Yes, the registration is going to be the key component that we're adding in. The misrepresentation, what we have found in looking through the legislation and consulting with LSC, that we make the bill stronger by affirmatively stating it in that part of the code and explicitly giving them the authority. But in the opinion of the Attorney General's office, that would strengthen their ability to be able to pursue these claims on behalf of the consumers. So we also have to, in the bill, give the Department of Commerce the authority to implement their requirements of licensing and registration.